The salvage ship Rusty Nail drifted silently toward the derelict space station. From the cockpit, Jack's rig studied the abandoned structure through his viewport. The station's exterior was scarred with micrometeorite impacts, its once bright warning lights now dark. According to his scanner, no one had visited this place in over 15 years. Perfect, Jax whispered, stroking his unkempt beard. At 43, Jax had spent most of his life collecting space junk. His weathered face and calloused hands told the story of a man who'd made his living from other people's trash. But this find was different. This wasn't just another piece of scrap. It was an entire station, and he'd bought it for practically nothing. Jax guided his ship toward the main docking bay. The station had been declared worthless by Novacorp after some accident years ago. Details were scarce in the public records. All Jax knew was that they'd cleared out in a hurry, leaving behind potentially valuable equipment. "Docking sequence initiated," announced the ship's AI in its flat mechanical voice. Jax secured his helmet and checked his oxygen levels. "Keep the engines warm, Rusty. I'll radio if I find anything good." "Acknowledged. Please exercise caution, Captain Riggs." With a hiss, the airlock opened, and Jax pushed himself into the station's gravity-free environment. His magnetic boots clicked as they made contact with the metal floor. "Gravity systems offline," he muttered, activating his suit's lights. "Let's see what treasures you're hiding." The station was larger than it had appeared from outside. Jax moved methodically through the corridors, marking valuable items on his tablet. Despite the darkness and silence, the place was relatively intact. Strange for a station abandoned so hastily. After an hour of exploring, Jax reached what appeared to be a research wing. Unlike the rest of the station, this section had heavy security doors, now forced open from the inside. Whatever had happened here, someone had been desperate to get out. "Hello?" Jax called out of habit, though he expected no response in the vacuum. His voice echoed oddly in his helmet, a sign that there might still be air in this section. Cautiously, Jax checked his atmospheric reader. To his surprise, the oxygen levels were stable. After confirming it wasn't toxic, he removed his helmet, breathing in stale but breathable air. "Now that's interesting, come on, Mum," he said. "Something's still powering this place." The research wing was a mess. Desks were overturned. Papers were scattered everywhere. Signs of panic. Jax picked up a data pad, but its battery was long dead. At the far end of the wing, a reinforced door stood partially open. Unlike the others, this one showed signs of being melted rather than forced. Jax squeezed through the gap, finding himself in what looked like a high-security laboratory. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical chamber. Inside, perfectly still, was a humanoid figure. At first, Jax thought it was a person in a suit, but as he moved closer, he realized it was a robot, a military-grade combat unit based on its design. Its metallic surface was gunmetal gray, with faint blue lines running across its frame like circuits. Its face was featureless except for a visor where eyes would be. "Now you're worth something," Jax whispered, his treasure hunter instincts kicking in. Military tech like this could fetch a fortune on the black market, enough to set him up for years. As Jax approached the chamber, the robot's visor suddenly glowed blue. Jax froze, his heart pounding. The chamber hissed open. "Step back, please." A surprisingly human voice came from the robot. It wasn't the flat tone of a standard AI, but had inflections, almost emotions. Jax stumbled backward, reaching for his cutting torch, the closest thing to a weapon he had. "I mean you no harm," the robot said, raising its metallic hands in a very human gesture. "But I would appreciate knowing who you are and why you're here." Jax swallowed hard. "Name's Jax Riggs. I'm a salvager. I own this station now and bought it fair and square." The robot tilted its head, the gesture unnervingly human. "You purchased the station?" "That's right. From Novacorp's liquidation division. Got it for a bargain, too." The robot seemed to process this information. "I see. And what do you intend to do with it?" "Strip it for parts. Sell what I can." Jax gestured vaguely. "What about you? What are you?" "I am Unit Echo, Advanced Autonomous Security System with human neural patterns. I was stationed here to protect the research team." The robot Echo stepped out of the chamber. It moved with a fluid grace that no robot Jax had ever seen could match. "Human neural patterns?" Jax repeated. "You mean like a human brain?" "Not exactly. My consciousness is based on a human template, memories, personality, experiences, all digitized and integrated with my AI systems. I am not human, but I was once." Jax's mind raced with the implications. He'd heard rumors about such technology experimental consciousness transfers, but they were supposedly theoretical, banned in most systems. So what happened here? Why was the station abandoned? Echo's visor dimmed slightly. There was an incident. The research team was working on consciousness transfer technology. I was their success story, a terminally ill soldier given a second chance as a machine. But NovaCorp wanted weapons, not people. When I refused to follow certain orders, they decided to decommission me. Decommission? You mean kill you? Delete me, yes. The researchers disagreed. There was conflict. In the chaos, the researchers helped me enter hibernation mode and evacuated. NovaCorp declared the project a failure, sealed the station, and apparently sold it years later. To you, Jax let out a low whistle. So you've been asleep in there for 15 years? It appears so. Echo looked around the lab. This changes things. The world I knew is gone. Jax studied the robot No, the person in a robot body. This complicated his salvage operation significantly. He couldn't just sell a sentient being for parts, but he also couldn't afford to walk away from his investment. Listen, Jack said slowly, formulating a plan. I need to make money from this station somehow, but I'm not in the business of selling people, robot body or not. Maybe we can work something out. Echo turned to him. What do you propose? Partnership. This station is big, well-positioned near a travel lane. Instead of scrapping it, we could repurpose it. Turn it into something profitable, such as. Jack smiled. How about a bar? Travelers always need a place to rest, drink, and share stories. We could call it the Ghost Coil. Mysterious past robot bartender people would come just for the novelty. Echo was silent for a long moment. A bar, it finally said. I have extensive combat training, advanced tactical systems, and you want me to serve drinks. And protect our customers, Jax added quickly. Space can be dangerous. Having security would be a major selling point. Another pause. This is not how I imagined my awakening. But it is preferable to being scrapped. Very well, Jax Riggs. You have a partner. Jax extended his hand, then hesitated, unsure if the robot would understand the gesture. To his surprise, Echo took his hand and shook it firmly. I look forward to our business venture. Now, shall we assess what needs to be done to transform this station? Jax grinned. Let's do it, partner. The next 3 months were a flurry of activity. Jax used most of his savings to purchase supplies and hire contractors to help with the renovations. Echo proved invaluable, working tirelessly to restore the station systems. They focused first on the central hub, a large circular room with viewport windows that offered spectacular views of space. This became the main bar area. Jax installed recycled tables and chairs while Echo rewired the lighting to create a warm, inviting atmosphere. The rest of the station was sealed off section by section as they worked. Some areas were repurposed into private rooms for guests who needed a place to stay. Others became storage for supplies and drinks. By the time they were ready to open, the Ghost Coil had transformed from an abandoned research station into a unique space bar. The name was displayed in glowing blue letters above the entrance, visible to passing ships. On opening night, Jack stood behind the newly constructed bar, nervously wiping a glass. You think anyone will show up? Echo, who had been polishing the metal surface of the bar counter, looked up. We are the only establishment within 3 light hours of this travel lane. Someone will come. As if on cue, the docking sensors chimed. See, Echo said, our first customer. Jax hurried to the docking bay to greet their visitor. A sleek courier ship had docked, not the usual type of vessel that needed rest stops. But Jax wasn't complaining. The courier who emerged was a slender woman with short, dark hair and eyes that darted quickly around the bay, assessing everything. Welcome to the Ghost Coil, Jax said with his best host smile. I'm Jax Riggs, owner and proprietor. Mira Voss, the woman replied, not returning his smile. I wasn't expecting to find a bar out here. This station was abandoned last time I passed through. New management, Jax explained. We just opened. Can I offer you a drink? First one's on the house. Mira seemed to relax slightly. Well, I could use a break from my route. Lead the way. As they entered the main bar area, Mira stopped abruptly at the sight of Echo standing behind the counter. Is that, she began. My business partner Echo, Jack said smoothly. Best bartender in this sector. Echo nodded politely. Welcome, Ms. Boss. What would you like to drink? Mira approached cautiously. That's a military-grade combat unit. EM series, if I'm not mistaken. You have a good eye, Echo replied. I was indeed manufactured as an EM series. However, I now prefer who rather than what, and I'm more than my original programming. Mira looked between Echo and Jax. You're telling me this thing is sentient? Not a thing, Jax corrected firmly. A person with rights and partnership shares in this establishment. Interesting, Mira said, sliding onto a bar stool. I'll have whatever's strongest. As Echo prepared her drink, Jax chatted with Mira, learning she worked for an independent courier service that specialized in sensitive deliveries, meaning either very valuable or not entirely legal. So, Mira said after her second drink, how does a salvager and a military robot end up running a bar together? Jax gave her the abbreviated version of their meeting, leaving out the details about Echo's consciousness transfer. Lucky find, Mira commented. Those units are worth a fortune on the black market. Echo's not for sale, Jax said firmly. Mira raised her eyebrows but didn't push the issue. Well, I should be going. Thanks for the drinks. She slid some credits across the bar. I'll spread the word about this place to other couriers. We're always looking for safe stops. After she left, Echo turned to Jax. You realize she will tell others about me. That's good, right? Free advertising. Not everyone will see me as a person, Jax. Some will see a valuable piece of equipment. Jax hadn't considered that. Then we'll deal with those people when they come. Partners watch each other's backs. Echo's visor brightened slightly, the closest thing to a smile it could manage. Indeed they do. Word spread quickly about the unusual bar at the edge of the travel lane. Within weeks, the Ghost Coil had become a popular stopover for all manner of space travelers, from legitimate traders to those operating in grayer areas of the law. Echo had become something of an attraction. Customers were fascinated by the robot bartender who could discuss philosophy one minute and break up a bar fight the next. Few realized the extent of Echo's sentience, believing it to be simply a highly advanced AI. Jax was careful about who he told the truth to. As Echo had predicted, not everyone would understand or accept a human consciousness in a machine body. In many systems, the technology was still illegal, and NovaCorp still had a standing bounty for certain stolen property from the station. One evening, as Jax was updating their inventory, the docking sensors chimed, indicating a large vessel had arrived. We expecting anyone big tonight? Jax asked Echo. Negative. Schedule shows only the usual traffic. Jax checked the external cameras. A sleek corporate transport ship was docking, the kind used by executives and VIPs. I don't like this, Jax muttered. Keep an eye out. The visitors who entered the bar wore expensive suits that immediately set them apart from the usual clientele. 3 men, led by an older gentleman with silver hair and a face that had seen too many cosmetic rejuvenation treatments. Welcome to the Ghost Coil, Jax greeted them cautiously. What can I get you, gentlemen? The silver-haired man smiled thinly. Information for starters. I'm Elliot Vane, Director of Asset Recovery for NovaCorp, and you must be the enterprising salvager who purchased our abandoned research station. Jax felt his stomach tighten. That's right. All legal and proper. I have the transfer documents if you'd like to see them. Oh, I'm sure everything is in order regarding the station itself, Vane said, his eyes scanning the bar. However, we've received reports that you may have found some valuable NovaCorp property that wasn't included in the sale. Before Jax could respond, Echo emerged from the back room. We have a delivery of Centaurian whiskey arriving tomorrow. Should I? Echo stopped upon seeing the NovaCorp executives. Vane's smile widened. Ah, there it is. Unit EM-12, designation Echo. Looking remarkably functional after all these years. Echo stood perfectly still. Director Vane, you haven't changed much since our last encounter. You remember me. The consciousness transfer was more successful than I thought. Vane turned to Jax. Mr. Riggs, I'm afraid you've been harboring stolen NovaCorp property. This unit represents millions in research and development. Jax stepped between Vane and Echo. Echo isn't property. And according to my purchase agreement, anything on the station at time of sale belongs to me. Standard equipment, yes, Vane conceded. But Unit Echo is classified military technology. It was never intended for sale. He motioned to his companions, who stepped forward. We're prepared to offer you compensation for your trouble, of course. I'm not for sale, Echo stated firmly. And I am not an it. Vane's pleasant demeanor slipped. You don't have a choice in the matter, machine. You are NovaCorp property, regardless of whatever personality matrix is currently running your systems. One of the executives produced a small device. This will shut down its higher functions without damaging the hardware. Should only take a moment. Jax reached under the bar for the pulse gun he kept for emergencies. You're not taking Echo anywhere. This is a serious mistake, Mr. Riggs, Vane warned. You're interfering with corporate property retrieval. That's a felony in most systems. He's right, Jax, Echo said quietly. Don't risk yourself. They can't just take you. Actually, we can, Vane said. But we'd prefer to do this amicably. Name your price, Mr. Riggs. Jax's mind raced. He needed time. Let's discuss this over drinks. On the house. Vane seemed amused by the offer. Very well. A drink, then business. As Jax prepared their drinks, he subtly activated the bar's emergency protocols, a system Echo had insisted on installing. Throughout the station, hidden cameras began recording, and a distress signal was sent to nearby ships. Here you are, gentlemen, Jax said, serving expensive whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. Now, about your claim on Echo. Vane sipped his drink. There's really nothing to discuss. The unit is NovaCorp intellectual property. The human template signed away all rights during the experimental procedure. Under duress, Echo interjected. I was dying. The agreement was that I would continue to exist, not become a weapon. Semantics, Vane dismissed. The consciousness transfer was always a means to an end, creating the perfect soldier. One that could think like a human but obey like a machine. Except I didn't, Echo said. I maintained my humanity, my morality. That's why you tried to erase me. Vane's smile disappeared completely. You disobeyed direct orders during a critical field test. 5 people died because you refused to act. Because you ordered me to sacrifice civilians to complete the mission, Echo countered. I chose not to murder innocents. Jax looked at Echo with new understanding. This wasn't just about a robot with consciousness. This was about a person who had made a moral choice and was being punished for it. The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of several new customers. A group of rough-looking traders led by a familiar face. Busy night, Miravos commented, her eyes taking in the tense scene. Jax had never been so glad to see the courier. Just having a business discussion with some NovaCorp representatives. Mira's expression hardened at the mention of NovaCorp. Like many independent operators, she had little love for the mega corporation. We'll finish our drinks and continue this discussion privately, Vane said, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Actually, Mira said, sliding onto a stool next to Vane, I couldn't help overhearing something about property rights. Fascinating subject. This doesn't concern you, one of Vane's men said sharply. Mira smiled. Oh, but it might. See, I'm not just a courier. I also represent the Artificial Sentience Legal Defense Coalition. And it sounds like you're attempting to claim ownership of a sentient being. Vane's face reddened. Unit Echo is not a being. It's a machine running a copied personality. That's for the courts to decide, Mira countered. And wouldn't it be interesting for them to hear the testimony we've been recording for the past 10 minutes? Vane looked around, suddenly aware that their conversation had been monitored. You're bluffing, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Am I? Mira produced a small device. This transmission has been broadcasting to my associates. Fascinating stuff about erasing a consciousness and forcing someone to kill civilians. Vane stood abruptly. This is corporate espionage. I'll have you arrested. Perhaps, Mira agreed. But the recording will still exist. How do you think the public will react to NovaCorp? Admitting they created sentient AI, then tried to delete it for having a conscience? The media would have a field day. The standoff hung in the air for several tense moments before Vane spoke again. This isn't over, he said finally. NovaCorp doesn't give up valuable assets easily. I'm not an asset, Echo said firmly, and I'm prepared to prove it in court if necessary. With a final glare, Vane motioned to his men, and they left the bar. After they were gone, Jax turned to Mira. Legal Defense Coalition? I thought you were a courier. Mira shrugged. I wear many hats, and I've been following Echo's case for years. When I saw him here, I contacted some old friends who've been interested in establishing legal precedent for artificial sentience rights. You knew who I was from the beginning, Echo said. I had my suspicions, Mira admitted. The EM series was infamous in certain circles, a soldier who chose humanity over orders. Some of us have been waiting for you to resurface. Jax slumped against the bar. So what happens now? Now, Mira said, we prepare for a fight. NovaCorp won't give up easily, but they also don't want this going public. We have leverage. I never wanted to be a legal test case, Echo said quietly. Sometimes we don't choose our battles, Mira replied. But this one is worth fighting. If we can establish legal precedent for your personhood, it could change everything for artificial sentience rights. Jax looked between them. Whatever happens, we're facing it together. Partners, remember? Echo's visor brightened. Partners. The legal battle that followed was complex and exhausting. NovaCorp filed suits in multiple systems, claiming rights to Echo as proprietary technology. Mira's contacts provided legal representation, arguing that Echo's sentience qualified him for personhood protections. Throughout it all, the ghost coil remained open. If anything, business increased as word spread about the bar with the robot fighting for rights. Many customers came out of curiosity but returned because of the quality of service and the unique atmosphere. 4 months into the legal proceedings, Mira arrived with news. The Galactic Circuit Court has agreed to hear Echo's case directly, she announced. This is huge. It means they're considering it a rights issue, not a property dispute. That's good, right? Jax asked, serving her usual drink. Very good. But there's a condition. Mira looked at Echo. They want to verify your sentience through direct examination. They want you to temporarily transfer your consciousness to a neutral system for testing. Echo went still. That would be difficult. My consciousness is integrated with this body's systems. A transfer could be dangerous. It's risky, Mira agreed. But it might be our best chance. If you can demonstrate that your consciousness exists independently of the hardware NovaCorp built, their property claim weakens significantly. Jax shook his head. There has to be another way. We can't risk Echo's existence on this gamble. Actually, Echo said slowly, there might be a solution. The research lab where you found me, it contains the original transfer equipment. If we could restore it, I could potentially transfer to a new body. Would that even work after all this time? Jax asked. Unknown, Echo admitted. But the technology was designed to be durable. And I still retain the complete schematics in my memory. Mira leaned forward. If we could get you a new, independently manufactured body, NovaCorp's claim would fall apart. You wouldn't be using any of their hardware. Exactly, Echo said. But I would need help. The transfer process is complex. Jax didn't hesitate. Then let's do it. What we neared. The plan they formulated was daring. Using contacts from the Ghost Coil's various customers, they sourced components for a new body, one based on civilian technology rather than military hardware. Echo designed it himself, choosing a more humanoid appearance that better reflected his identity. Meanwhile, Jax and Mira worked to restore the transfer laboratory. Much of the equipment was salvageable, though some parts needed to be replaced or repaired. 2 weeks later, they were ready to attempt the transfer. The new body lay on one transfer platform, while Echo connected himself to the other. Are you sure about this? Jax asked, concern evident in his voice. If something goes wrong, if we do nothing, NovaCorp will eventually find a way to take me. Echo replied. This is my choice, Jax. Thank you for making it possible. Mira monitored the equipment readings. Transfer protocols look stable. Ready when you are, Echo. Echo's visor dimmed slightly. Initiating transfer sequence. The laboratory equipment hummed to life. Energy crackled between the two platforms as Echo's consciousness began the delicate migration from one form to another. The process took hours. Jax paced nervously, while Mira kept a vigilant eye on the fluctuating readings. At one point, the power systems faltered, causing Jax's heart to nearly stop until the backup generators kicked in. Finally, the transfer equipment powered down. On one platform lay Echo's original military body, now an empty shell. On the other, the new humanoid form remained motionless. Did it work? Jax whispered. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the new body's eyes opened, warm, amber-colored optical sensors that blinked as they adjusted to the light. System calibration in progress, said a voice from the new body, Echo's voice, though slightly different through the new vocal synthesizers. Motor functions initiating. Gradually, Echo sat up, examining his new hands. The body was sleeker than the military unit, with a face that could express emotions through subtle mechanical movements. It wasn't human, but it was unmistakably a person. How do you feel? Mira asked. Echo looked up, his new face forming what was recognizably a smile. Different, but still me. The transfer was successful. Jax let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Welcome back, partner. The courtroom was packed when Echo's case finally came before the Galactic Circuit Court. News of the consciousness transfer had spread, bringing media attention from across the system. This would be the first case of its kind, a legal test of whether an artificial consciousness could claim personhood. Echo sat beside his legal team, his new body drawing curious looks. Across the aisle, NovaCorp's lawyers surrounded Director Vane, who looked far less confident than he had at the Ghost Coil. The Chief Justice addressed the court. This case presents unprecedented questions about the nature of consciousness and rights. NovaCorp claims ownership of the consciousness known as Echo, based on their creation of the original transfer technology. Echo claims personhood independent of physical form. We will hear arguments from both sides. NovaCorp's lawyers presented first, arguing that Echo's consciousness was artificially created using proprietary technology, making it intellectual property regardless of its current housing. What sits before you is not a person, but a complex algorithm mimicking human thought, their lead counsel argued. Echo is a sophisticated program that NovaCorp spent billions developing. The fact that it now occupies a different hardware platform doesn't change its origins. When Echo's team presented their case, they called a surprise witness, Dr. Ileana Moreau, one of the original researchers from the station. I led the consciousness transfer project, Dr. Moreau testified. Our goal was never to create an artificial intelligence, but to preserve an existing human consciousness. That of Lieutenant Marcus Wells, who volunteered while facing terminal illness. And what happened to Lieutenant Wells? Echo's lawyer asked. His physical body died, but his consciousness, his memories, personality, everything that made him who he was successfully transferred to the Echo unit. What NovaCorp refuses to acknowledge is that Echo isn't an AI pretending to be human, he is human, just in a different form. Director Vane shifted uncomfortably as Dr. Moreau continued. When Echo refused to follow orders that would have resulted in civilian casualties, NovaCorp decided to reset him, effectively killing the person we had saved. That's why we helped him hide. The testimony continued for days, with experts in consciousness, philosophy, and technology weighing in on both sides. Through it all, Echo remained composed, answering questions directly and demonstrating the full range of human emotion and moral reasoning. Finally, it was Echo's turn to address the court directly. I was born Marcus Wells, he began. I lived as a human for 29 years before illness began to take my body. I volunteered for the transfer, not because I wanted to become a weapon, but because I wanted to live. What makes us people isn't our bodies but our minds, our ability to think, to feel, to choose. Echo gestured to his new form. This body was never NovaCorp property. It was built specifically to demonstrate that my consciousness exists independently of any hardware. I am not claiming rights as a machine. I am claiming rights as a person whose mind now exists in a different medium. The courtroom was silent as Echo concluded. I feel joy when the ghost coil is full of happy customers. I feel fear when I think about being erased. I feel friendship toward Jax Riggs, who saw me as a person when others saw property. Are these feelings less real because they're processed differently than yours? Do they deserve less protection? I ask this court to recognize that personhood transcends biology. After 3 weeks of arguments, the court retired to deliberate. Jax, Echo, and Mira waited anxiously at the ghost coil, which had closed temporarily for the proceedings. Whatever happens, Jax said, pouring drinks for them all, this place is still yours as much as mine. Partners for life. Echo lifted his glass, a gesture he'd never been able to perform in his old body. To partners and to choices. The court's decision came down 2 days later. In a landmark 6-3 ruling, they declared that Echo qualified as a person under the law, entitled to all rights and protections thereof. The majority opinion stated that consciousness, not its vessel, is the essence of personhood, and that the ability to reason morally and make independent choices meets the standard for legal personhood, regardless of whether that consciousness resides in organic tissue or synthetic material. NovaCorp was ordered to relinquish all claims on Echo's consciousness and pay substantial damages for their attempt to commit what would effectively be murder by consciousness erasure. The decision sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Other artificial or transferred consciousnesses began seeking legal recognition, citing the Echo precedent. NovaCorp's stock tumbled as the public reacted to revelations about their ethics violations. When Echo and Jax returned to the ghost coil, they found a crowd of supporters waiting to celebrate. The bar had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of a new understanding of what it meant to be a person. As the celebration continued around them, Jax pulled Echo aside. So now that you're legally a person with full rights, what's next? You could do anything, go anywhere. Echo looked around at the bar they had built together, at the diverse crowd of humans and non-humans all celebrating together. This is where I want to be, Echo said simply. The ghost coil isn't just a bar, it's a place where anyone can be accepted for who they are, not what they're made of. That seems worth staying for. Jax grinned and raised his glass. To the ghost coil, then, and to finding unexpected treasure in abandoned space stations. Echo clinked his glass against Jax's. To unexpected treasure indeed. As the night continued, patrons approached Echo with questions about his experience and his new legal status. Each time, he patiently explained his journey from human to machine to legally recognized person. Does it feel different? One customer asked, having a new body? Echo considered the question. The medium changes, but the essence remains. I'm still the same person who woke up in that laboratory when Jax found me, just with more freedom to choose my path forward. And as Jax watched his partner interact with their customers, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. What had started as a simple salvage operation had become something much more profound, a friendship that had changed the definition of personhood itself. The Ghost Coil continued to thrive, becoming famous not just as a unique bar, but as the birthplace of a movement. Jax and Echo expanded their operation, using their platform to advocate for consciousness rights across the galaxy. And every night, when the bar was quiet and the last customers had gone, they would sit together by the viewport, looking out at the stars. A human and a robot united not by what they were, but by who they chose to be.